Refuge and bodhicitta practice, which is based on Lamatisha's prayer that we recite all the time. And although it's quite unnatural to sit up here and say words while you're pretending to meditate with this strange thing on my head, still I think it's an incredibly joyful thing to be able to meditate on this oral instruction of the Guru. And since this whole session is basically the Refuge and bodhicitta prayer, Sangye Chidan Sukhi Chanamla, instead of beginning by doing that prayer, let's imagine, if it's comfortable for you, that Rinpoche is on the throne, joining us in this practice, just as he comes and joins us for the Lama Chupa. And that he's extremely pleased. He's so happy that we're doing this retreat. This is what he wanted. This is what he asked. He's so happy that we're doing this, that we're putting effort. Very joyful. And waves of blessing and inspiration from his joy absorb into us, blessing us to be able to do this meditation. And then we begin this practice by generating useful fear to our own samsara, which is the lower vehicle cause for refuge. By thinking to ourselves that from beginningless time until now, I have been experiencing all the general sufferings of samsara and the particular sufferings of the three lower realms, numberless times without break. And then trying to really feel the meaning of those words in our heart, to really discover what it means. So begin by thinking of the sufferings that we've been experiencing this life. It began with the suffering of birth. It will finish with the agony of death. In between there are sicknesses, aging, not getting what we want, getting what we don't want. And even when we get what we want, never ever being satisfied. And on top of that, the mere fact that we have this body-mind means that in addition to the gross sufferings, even the pleasures we experience are only in the nature of suffering. And our whole experience is one of pervasive suffering, because these aggregates are contaminated by karma and delusions. So there is never 1 second pure happiness that we experience. And now here is the first shocking truth. That this is not the first time. The continuity of suffering has no beginning. Every single suffering we've experienced this life, we have experienced in the past numberless times without beginning. We think this is the first time, but it's not the first time. It has been numberless times. And not only that, but every single suffering that we see others experiencing. Think of all those images. People mutilated in wars, women and children raped and abused. The tsunamis, the earthquakes, the horrific scenes of the Holocaust. Those around us who experience traumatic things. There's not 1 single one of these sufferings that we have not ourselves experienced numberless times since beginningless past lives. And here is a second shocking truth, that the continuity of suffering is endless. Future suffering will never finish. There will never be an end to the continuity of suffering until we really practice Dharma. there is no one single suffering that we haven't experienced. Numberless times. There's also not one single pleasure that we haven't experienced numberless times. But because of clinging to that and being attached, it has trapped us in cyclic existence. So it's totally meaningless, it's foolish, it's ridiculous to be attached and put all our energy chasing after things which are only in the nature of suffering. So feeling this in the heart and recognizing our situation now with this precious life, with these unimaginably qualified gurus, with the precious teachings, make the immediate decision to change the life into pure Dharma. From meaningless to meaningful, from worldly Dharma to holy Dharma, from selfish mind to bodhicitta, cherishing others, from ignorance to right view. Now, on the basis of this, generate the Mahayana cause for refuge, which is great compassion, by thinking the numberless hell beings, hungry ghosts, animals, humans, suras, asuras and intermediate state beings have been experiencing all the general sufferings of samsara and the particular sufferings of the three real realms, numberless times from beginning of rebirth to now. Again, try to feel that in your heart, to discover it. Can you imagine? Before it was just one person, yourself, but now it's numberless. It's numberless beings in each realm. You cannot say how many, they're numberless. Numberless beings have been suffering all these sufferings from beginningless time. They are suffering now, and the continuity of that suffering will have no end until it's ceased. think what that means. Let's take an example of an earthworm. How many earthworms are there here in Blue Ridge? How many in North Carolina? How many in America? How many in this world? How many in this universe? How many in numberless universes? And think what it's like to have that kind of body. No arms, no legs, no face. Dragging its body along on the surface of the earth or living in darkness below. Think of those images of when the earthworms are squashed on the road, but they're still alive. When a hook is put through them and they're thrown into the water to be eaten, totally helpless. Or bitten by hundreds of ants with no protection. If you can feel what this suffering would be like, then know that there are numberless beings born as earthworms right now and suffering. And this is not the first time. It's been countless times. And now what happens when you think of all these beings as though they were your relatives and those you feel close to? Your mother, your child, born, died and reborn in this state. How would you feel? How would you feel if it was the person closest to you in that state? And that is what the Buddha said, that they have all been our mothers. That they've all been kind. So think how there are numberless sentient beings who are suffering right now, who have suffered numberless times in the past and will suffer numberless times in the future, unless we do something. Because they themselves have no idea. They have no idea of the cause of happiness and no idea of the cause of suffering. So it's completely our responsibility to help. Because we have every opportunity to do so. How can we free all these numberless beings from suffering and bring them to happiness? Only by ourselves first achieving the state of enlightenment. Therefore we need to train night and day in the LamRim meditations. And to do this, we rely upon Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. Buddha, who himself is totally liberated, fully enlightened. Who is most skillful and wise in the ways to liberate others. Whose holy mind is bound by infinite compassion without the slightest discriminating thought. And who constantly helps beings no matter whether they help or harm. So thinking of this from deep down, with a whole heart, entrust yourself in order to be able to benefit all the sentient beings, along with all sentient beings going for refuge to Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, to renown their qualities. And then we recite the first 2 lines of the refuge prayer 3 times. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. Next is generating bodhicitta. So first think of all the merits you've created this life, every single virtuous action, every single virtue from meditating, offering, practicing the 6 perfections, everything, from the smallest to greatest, put it all together with the merits of all the Buddhas, all bodhisattvas, and all sentient beings. And dedicate all this to achieve enlightenment. To achieve enlightenment for transmigratory beings. So think about the meaning of transmigratory beings. The numberless hell beings, hungry ghosts, animals, humans, suras, asuras, intermediate state beings, are constantly migrating from realm to realm, born, suffering in that realm, dying, migrating to another realm, born, experiencing all the sufferings in that realm, dying, migrating to another realm, because of being under the control of karma and delusions. Sentient beings do not choose to be born in the hells. They do not choose to be born as mosquitoes, as rats, as hungry ghosts. They do not choose. They are powerless. They are totally ignorant and suffering. And it will continue like this endlessly in the future if I don't help. And these mother sentient beings, these mother migrators, are also migrating because from the moment they're born, they are rushing so fast towards death. So now think of the meaning of going for refuge in order to benefit the mother transmigratory beings. And the only way to benefit them is to cause them to cease the causes of suffering, to actualize cessation, to achieve the path. And to do this, we need to achieve enlightenment. So thinking over this, generate that very strong thought to achieve enlightenment. To be able to liberate the numberless sentient beings, the mother sentient beings, who are so kind and precious and who are suffering. That bodhicitta thought which is so precious. And then recite the second two lines of the prayer 3 times. By my practice of giving and other perfections, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. By my practice of giving and other perfections, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. By my practice of giving and other perfections, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. So now reflect on emptiness. The I, this real I that seems to be somewhere in the heart, very solid. This I that is seeking enlightenment does not exist at all from its own side. The action of seeking enlightenment also does not exist at all from its own side. The enlightenment that I am seeking to achieve also does not exist at all from its own side. and all the numberless mother sentient beings for whom I am seeking enlightenment do not exist at all from their own side. And then we dedicate due to 3-time rites accumulated by myself, all Buddhas, Bodhisattvas and all sentient beings, which are completely empty, existing from their own side, totally non-existent, hallucination, merely labelled by mind. May the I which appears to exist from its own side, but does not exist at all in that way, complete hallucination, quickly achieve the state of full enlightenment, which exists but does not exist from its own side, in order to lead all sentient beings who exist but do not exist from their own side to that state by myself alone, who exists but does not exist from its own side. Wajan chua sam chua ramu che moing ye monong yang yu chi kia wa nyam mo ying on gondu ma sho. The next session is 1:45 in half an hour.